Welcome to Puzzling Company, your home for at-home puzzles and mysteries. Here are your hosts, Jared and Zach.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Puzzling Company. As always, I am Jared, and with me,
it's Zach.
Zach, good to have you here today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
What's going on with you?
Not much. I started. Well, okay, I've only been once, so I don't want to say I'm a expert rock climber. I went to a climbing gym with a good friend, started doing that, tried it out. It was a lot of fun, but I've been doing that and started a diet, trying to get more in shape. Be nice.
I know that there's one creator right now that's literally so excited that you just said that.
Really?
Yes.
That's funny. When I become a professional athlete at rock climbing, I'm excited to post all about that.
Let's get it. I love it. What are we getting ourselves into today, Zach? If you could just give us a brief.
I don't know if it's small. It's important. It's our legacy.
Oh, our legacy.
And the game we are discussing is Legacy from Argix.
Yep.
I think is how you say that.
Yes.
Games.
Our French accent is terrible.
Yes. Please ignore anything I say if I say anything in French, other than oui.
Which is probably not said correctly either.
Correct. It's
yes.
Okay.
Well, before we butcher the French language collectively, let's take a break. We'll be right back.
All right. Jared, I got to cut out a little early today. I have an interview.
An interview? You didn't tell me about that. Where at?
With Soup.
Oh, nice. I've heard really great things about the Soup Shed off of I-24. So come on down to the Soup Shed.
No, Jared. Soup is a society for the observation of unknown phenomena. They actually sent me my first case as a test. Take a look at this folder.
Why is this folder full of pictures of me?
Well, they are all about documenting the weird and bizarre. If you'd like a chance to join Soup, head on over to crackanutmysteries.com.
How did they get this picture of me in the shower? Well, welcome back to Puzzling Company. As we mentioned before the break, we are talking about a game called Legacy. Zach, what are people getting themselves into when they want to play Legacy? What is the format of this game? What's it like? Lay on us a good overview.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So how Legacy works is when you open up, you'll get an introductory letter that will kind of explain how this game will be played. The story behind it is that you are a child of this person who has passed away, who left in their will this adventure for you to go on to get the inheritance or to get your legacy. The game is for you as well as to explain why there's a French and a English version. If I'm not mistaken, you are meeting up with one of your other brothers or sisters, so that makes that connection easier, which I found that kind of cool. So you're basically meeting up with someone else that you haven't seen in a long time, and you're trying to make the goal is that you will get closer as the game goes on, as well as the adventure that will ensue. But yeah, the game, you kind of open up, you'll get two different games. They'll tell you to play one first and then one second. To let you know what those are. The first game that is in there is called Eiffel.
So just to be clear, you're buying Legacy, but you're getting two games inside of it?
That is correct. Okay. Yes. Inside the box will be two games that are part of the overall experience that is Legacy.
Got
one
you.
being Eiffel, and the other being
Hellas.
That is correct. And then the game does a really good job of kind of explaining how you'll go from there.
Yeah, and the part of in part one, you're trying to figure out the who, and then in Hellas, it's the where, right? Is that correct? Like those are.
Yeah, you're generally trying to figure out more of like you're trying to narrow down a lot of information, like where it is, kind of the general idea, and then you go there, and then it's more about getting closer and closer, and more specific to finding the treasure.
It's a really cool concept. It is fun to open up a box and to see, oh, we've got multiple games to play. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like how Unlock gives you now like 3 in 1.
Yes.
And it feels like you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. I don't know. I like it. And it's a natural break point. I feel like we should talk about that too. But here in the first section, we always talk about what we really enjoyed about the game and where we felt like there was room for improvement. So kind of the format of how we're going to do this today is we're going to talk about overall for the Legacy experience, what we liked, and then we're going to go into each section, Eiffel 1889 and Hellas, to talk about where we felt like there was room for growth and what we really liked about it. So Zach, kick us off. Overall, for Legacy as an experience, what did we really like about it?
Yeah, we really liked the signposting in this game. I think this is one of the best games we've ever played when it came to signposting.
Totally agree with you.
The game literally tells you exactly what item goes to what by indicating in your introductory letter that it gives you your overall objectives by basically putting them in order. Like you need to do this and then you want to do this. This is the information you need to gather before the game ends.
Well, there's a symbol.
Correct. That's the other. Well, that's not. Yeah. Part one is that it just tells you what your goal is.
It tells you what your goal is, and then you have a linear order.
Yes.
And then there's a symbol for every single puzzle.
And then every puzzle that is related to that step of the puzzle of the game has the symbol on the items.
You may be sitting here going like, that doesn't sound much fun. No, it was fantastic because they also do a really good job of creatively hiding the signposting.
Yes, it's in some of them, a lot of them they're pretty creatively put in there. And there's some that you can kind of tell instantly, like that's just to make clear that like that's involved with that. But a lot of them, the theming of the game, it fits in so well that it doesn't feel like, okay, there's just a star on this because there's a star, right?
Right.
Like it's clear, like, oh, if this is the hint, once you like all the items that have Eiffel Towers on them are part of the same clue.
Yes.
Like the Eiffel Tower is hidden well enough that you're like, oh, that's cool. Like I found that pretty quickly, but it didn't feel like it's just like shoehorned symbolism in there. You know what I mean?
I agree. And that's what makes this game so much fun is okay, this symbol's here and this symbol's here. These things must go together. And then there's another layering of puzzling to go with it. Mm-hmm. And the puzzles there and after weren't just like, oh, well, yeah, thanks for giving it all away. It wasn't like that. There's a lot of physical items, paper items, different things that you're trying to cover. And you needed that connection. And that's what good signposting does. It says, go this way. This is where you need to look for your thing. Then when you get there, okay, cool. Now I need to make another connection, work through a process, whatever the puzzle may be. And that worked really well. I have to self-incriminate myself here that I didn't pick up on it when we were playing Eiffel. And Zach had to be like, pop me on the head a couple times and be like, hello. And I was like, dang, that was a real bad miss on my part.
It was pretty funny, actually.
But by the time that we made it, but then you learned that so that by the time that you got to Hellas, it was like,
we had no issue with that.
I think we beat the second part of this game in like 25 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, I think the average, and I think both games are anywhere from like 60 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the game. And I think the second game is supposed to be shorter by a little bit. But yeah, because we had played the first one and understood a lot of it, the second game was a lot quicker.
Right, and it feels like humble brag moment. Usually that's your area of expertise.
What are you talking about?
but I think it's like really good because you taught me your system in the first game and now I'm adept to it in the second game.
Yep.
That's great puzzle building, game building. I want to break down each game. What did we really like about Eiffel 1889, which is the first part?
We really liked the time period aesthetics.
Ooh, it was good.
Yeah, I mean I loved that everything felt like it was 1889. Like the puzzles felt like they fit in really well. It was masked well to fit into that time era. There were puzzles that were really well done that looked legitimately like they were from 1889. It felt like nothing in this game was out of that time period. Like it all was authentic.
Even the digital components.
Yeah, and in this game there are digital components. Like you got to watch you got to look at old pictures and like old video. Like, and that was intriguing, and like audio. It was just all very aesthetically pleasing.
Yes. If you're a film buff out there, you'll enjoy some of the history that comes with this time period in this specific country, which Eiffel, France. I think we're all well aware of this. And side note, this game is really cool, and I like this because it's one game and you can play it in French or English.
Yes.
Which is really cool. Like imagine any instruction manual that you pick up to build those horrible IKEA things at home. It's got all the languages there.
Yeah.
You're ready to go. If you speak French or English, this is a great game for you. The creator's French. It makes sense. I love that though. But there were a couple times where I was like, are we supposed to? And then I had to be like, nope, just flip it to the other side, Jared. It's in English.
Am I supposed to understand French
Am I supposed to understand? Nope, flip it to the other side, Jared. Get it going. But I was thoroughly impressed with the time period meets the area of the world that we were supposed to be in. It was really cool. I really, really like that about Eiffel. What did you like about Hellas, the second part of the game, or the second game?
The second game being Hellas. I really liked the meta puzzle.
I did too.
I think the meta puzzle is my favorite part of the game. The game overall was a good experience, but the meta puzzle just fed so well. I don't want to spoil the meta puzzle.
Because you very easily could.
Correct. But it has a really fun element that I didn't expect. Like we were doing it, and on a lot of it's like self-contained in its own category. Like in terms of like everything's kind of like told to you what goes with what. And then when you get to the meta puzzle, it kind of, I wouldn't say throws that out the window, but it's more on you to figure out everything. And that's kind of like a fun departure from how the rest of the game played.
Yes.
And it goes, okay, like, how are you supposed to figure this out? And then part of it does require things that you did in the game. But then the other half goes like, it's on you to figure this out. Like, what could go with that?
Yes. And I will say also, just a side note, that some of the puzzling in this game does require outside knowledge.
You can look up information.
You can look up information, or there are some coding sections where you may need to know. It's not like unpopular types of coding, but you may need to do some research on that you just may not know.
Yeah.
So let's transition now to talk about where we felt like there was some room for improvement. So let's start with our overall experience. I felt like, and I don't know if you agree with this, that this game had what I call in the escape room world second room syndrome.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
And for those of you that don't know what I mean is, if you are playing a multi-room escape room, especially if it just has two games, you start in point A, you're working to point B. My personal opinion and feeling on this game is that point B at a minimum has to match puzzling and aesthetics as much as it did in room one. If it's a smaller room, if it is just like has less items or there's less to do in that second room, that's a miss for me. And I felt like this game did that. To me, Eiffel was the stronger game on so many different levels. And by the time that we got to Hellas, the puzzling, the narrative was a bad example of a second room syndrome in escape rooms. Agree or disagree with that?
I agree. It's funny. I think we discussed this, but I think if we would have played them flipped, I would have appreciated Hellas more as a beginning game.
100%.
Because it would have gave me still the same introductory part of like getting the narrative, but then also like having an understanding of how the game plays. And it's like a little bit shorter to get like a better grasp. And then jump into the bigger game that was Eiffel in this scenario. The narrative would have to change a little bit to fit both of those, right? But I think we would have appreciated Hellas more if it's like I said, it's the thing of second room syndrome, or like playing it, or it's the thing when you play other like at home puzzle games and you play one and then you play the other and you're like, oh, if I would have played that one first and then played that one, I would have probably like
absolutely
liked it more because I know what that one played like.
Absolutely.
That one now unfortunately pays a little bit for it.
Like, and all we're saying is Hellas is not a bad game.
No,
that's not what we're saying. But we're saying is you're building anticipation, narrative, quality of the game and the environment. Eiffel led in that. So as I'm creating a game, I want to give you a simpler building experience in round one, and then really give you more content and excitement once you reach the second part of the game. So again, I felt like flip it and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything in Eiffel that we felt like there was some room for improvement?
Not really. I think Eiffel played really well. I will say though, if we had to talk about like another room for improvement, it wouldn't really be for Eiffel, but probably be for Hellas.
Okay.
I think it's probably the puzzle difficulty flow.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so in this game, the very first puzzle is kind of difficult. It's not like insanely difficult, but compared to some of the puzzles that come after it, it leads off with like this really strong puzzle that's like pretty difficult, but it's like pretty good. But you do it, and then the next few puzzles are like quick and simple comparatively to the very first puzzle, where we're like, oh, there's a lot going on in this. Oh, we have to like look at this way. Oh, we have to do this. Now we have to write this down. Now we have to do this like part of a process puzzle and then finish it. And then immediately after that, it's like, oh, do this. Oh, we did it. All right, answer in. Oh, we did this. Now put answer in. It felt like we didn't get an early win in terms of like a very simple puzzle to lead you into it. And it started off with like one of its more difficult puzzles instantly.
Yes.
And then you're like, and then after that, you're like, okay, now the puzzles are like pretty simple until we get to the end again.
Right. I'm a firm believer in either two types of puzzle difficulty flows. And we've talked about these before. One of them is kind of the bell curve, and the other one is like the continuous rise.
Mm-hmm.
And some examples of those games, if you play anything by the Wild Optimists, they are the poster childs for this type. They love to build your confidence, and then you hit that hard puzzle mid-game, and then you kind of gravity brings you back down and you finish with kind of a sweet, simple finish. Games like the ASMPC, when we played Moodus Markings, that game from the get-go to the last puzzle constantly increases in difficulty. I think there are valid arguments for both of those. I like both of those styles. What I do not like is getting hit in the stomach with the first puzzle, and then that sets my tone for what I think is coming after it, and then finding puzzles that we just breeze through. It doesn't make sense to lead that way. There needs to be a reordering of puzzle flow in terms of difficulty moving forward, or puzzle times. I'm personally a believer in those other two. Hit me with a bell curve or hit me with a continuous rise to the very end. I can work within those, but I don't like coming out with big guns or long process puzzles and then finding my ways through easy connections or puzzles that have limited time frames. So Hellas could benefit from a simple reorganization because, again, you've done such a good job in Eiffel 1889 of teaching us signposting that by the time we get to Hellas, we're ready to rock and roll. Like, clearly this goes with this. I've grouped all of these together. This is going to go together. And then we, like I said, it felt like we climbed the mountain, the first puzzle, and then just rode a slide the rest of the way until we got to the meta puzzle, which did require some more. So it almost felt like it was almost an inverse bell curve. It was like we did a U.
Yeah.
We started hard and then it got really easy. And then near the end we had one and we climbed back up, and that was a miss for me. Yeah. Agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree.
It's time and art and the science of these things prove that bell curve or rising is the way to go. But overall, I think this is a really cool concept, and it was an enjoyable game for us.
Yeah, I enjoyed all of it. We really liked the game as a whole. I think we liked Eiffel a little bit more, obviously, than Hellas. But like, I would recommend playing both. They were fun.
Well, cool.
Well, if you buy Legacy, you'll get to play both anyways.
Yes, if you buy Legacy,
but they're both worth playing, obviously. They're
yes,
fun.
Absolutely. And this was a game that we actually got off of Kickstarter, fulfilled, and that you can buy now as well. So be able to check that out. That's going to wrap us up for our first section. We have Puzzles of the People coming at you next.
Solve puzzles, write reviews, win prizes. It's time for Puzzles to the People.
I'm over it.
Over what?
Christmas. People can't let this holiday go, man. I'm still receiving Christmas-themed mail. Look at this red envelope I got yesterday.
Jared, you are so uncultured.
Uncultured? Because I refuse to celebrate Christmas year-round?
No, you're uncultured because, one, that color is scarlet, not red. And two, because that envelope is jammed-packed with puzzles and mysteries. Scarlet Envelope features escape room-style experiences that you may receive every month in the mail. Each episode features a different story, but all their experiences are tied together in a bigger narrative that you are trying to unravel.
I think I could get down with Christmas all year.
Well, head on over to scarletenvelope.ca to start your adventures today. Well, welcome back to Puzzling Company. We are now in the section that is Puzzles to the People. In this section, Jared asks me questions. Yeah.
That you're not ready for.
Yeah. But yeah, he'll ask me questions in the section. It always usually ends up being a topic that is around the game that we played. Or we cover sometimes like people's reviews or like things they've left on like different websites. We can kind of look at it, their quotes, stuff like that. But Jared, what question do you have for me today?
I want to talk to you today about games that are dually analog and digital.
Okay.
Because we've run into games that lean more one way or the other, but I feel like Legacy is a really good example of games that gave us a lot of tangible, but also gave us a lot of digital. And I kind of just want to open up a dialogue with you about what you think about the fusing of that, because the truth about where these games are at in the tabletop world is they're not video games, but they're not board games, but sometimes they are both. And I feel like creators, more than video games or more than tabletop games, have a world of places and formats and different things that they can pull from. But I don't want to get into another format conversation. I really want to talk into about the intersection of digital meets the tangible analog things that we have in front of us.
Okay.
What did you think about that intersection in the Legacy game that we played?
Yeah, and Legacy, I thought it was well done. In Eiffel 1889, I thought it was super well done. Like the website's used as like an answering key for part of it, but has like the hint system in it. When you solve certain parts, you gained new information.
Zach's going British.
Yes,
Spot on.
Spot on. But yeah, you gain new information. Some of it was video, some of it was more like text. Some of it was audio. But it was really cool because it felt like we would interact with that, and it almost felt like there was a lot of interactability on the digital aspect. But then you had to use the tangibility and the stuff that you had in person to play into it. So they fed off each other really well. They synced. Like I would get information I needed from the digital aspect, and it was fun to interact with, and then I would be able to use it with the stuff I had in person.
Yes.
And have that really work together. And then in Hellas, it felt the same. There was a lot of elements that the online part was really good and played into the solving of the physical stuff, and some of the physical stuff you needed the online to do. Like they played really well off each other, that I felt like at many points I needed both, and they were both well done.
I agree.
In terms of like complementing each other.
I agree. I struggle with games that just use a little bit of one.
Because sometimes it feels like, at least in my opinion, it's not needed, depending on the game. Like
Right.
if I play a game and it's 99% in person, and then for one tiny part it goes, okay, look up this thing on the internet, then I'm like,
Right.
why didn't you just give me that information?
Right. Or even games like, I'll throw out a couple that felt 99% digital, but felt like 1% analog. Like 2 episodes ago, we had USB Escape.
Mhm.
That was one that I thought actually was done well, because it moves you from analog into digital and then doesn't really come back.
Yeah.
But then like ASPMC
Mhm.
has one print off.
Yep.
And that we love that puzzle, but it was kind of like,
But it could have been online.
oh, I don't know if that puzzle could have been online. You maybe if you
It's
would have
hard.
that's hard. But
There are games like that where it feels like it could have been adopted differently to just fully been on one platform. And in some games it could. I mean, but like I said, it's a creative argument. Like there are games that I think having that one physical aspect when it's fully digital works.
right.
And then some it doesn't.
It just has to make sense, I think, is the biggest thing. Give me some areas where you feel like it makes a lot of sense to have a digital component to your game. If I'm turning you into creator, Zach, you're saying, this is what digital gives me that I may need. This is why I should use it. What are you leveraging in digitally?
Depending on the game, I think you can tell stories and narrative really well because you can create videos. I mean, photos you can put into the physical game.
Sure.
But videos can be really cool. Like I know we've played a few games where digital was used for kind of an answering key, but then like the narrative was mostly played either through like the opening letter and some of the stuff you found, but then like a lot of it was like the ending was played through a video that you watch.
Yes.
Right. Like example I'm going to use for this is like Witchery Spell. Like Witchery Spell has online elements that you definitely have to do for puzzles. So I'm not saying it's like 1%, but in that game, like the ending having a visual is like super rewarding. So having like, I can imagine games where it's mostly that and then you have one part online. Cold Case Crackers.
Yes.
That's one I could think of that has a digital aspect that I really liked, that it felt minimal to a degree. That a lot of it's in physical, but then you had like narrative things you had to look up online on their website. But then at the end, the video or like the audio things that play into it were like really beneficial to making those more impactful in terms of narrative.
Yes.
So I think doing things like that, it can be really good. Online lets you do things you can't do physically, which like videos in person, unless you're going to send me an iPad or here's a laptop.
The greatest at-home puzzle mystery game.
Hey,
we get an iPad in the mail.
If some company wants to send me an iPad to watch their videos on, hey, I'll take it.
I don't want to know what the price tag attached to that game is going.
Okay, I want it for free, of course.
Reviewer copy, right? Yeah, reviewer copy.
Yes.
It's so interesting that you went narrative because in my mind I was thinking puzzle. because
Okay.
because I think one of the greatest advantages, and we talked about this a little bit in the middle section of another episode, but the uniqueness of inputs that you're allowed to have.
Yes.
Like, you limit yourself, I think you have more opportunities in the digital world than you do in the analog world to create unique ways to solve things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, because what we're so accustomed to for a lot of the games that we play in the analog world, like our subscriptions, it's like, don't open this envelope until you give me a 7-letter word.
Yeah.
We're familiar with that, or a 4-digit combination. But in the digital world, it can do cool things. Things can move. Things can activate.
Yes.
You give yourself more puzzling exits.
Yeah.
And I think that's where one of the big, I totally agree with you. There are some narrative plays there as well. But for me, I'm looking at it and I kind of salivate a little bit thinking about like all of the cool things that we can do. And we've seen that in a lot of the great games with some of our favorite companies that use the digital to give us really unique solves.
Oh, agreed.
And I love that a lot. So now let's flip it. What are you getting in the analog world more so than that you're getting in the digital world? Because there were some great analog solves in Legacy that we played today as well that I really enjoyed. So flip it now. When you look at games, what are you seeing as some of the advantages of like the pure tabletop?
I mean, tangibility is huge. Like being able to actually interact with it. Because there's the difference between like seeing something online and being like, oh, okay, like that's a cool, like, I almost want to say like the point and click adventure games or like point and click escape room style games where you're like, okay, this is a cool aesthetic, but I'm just clicking this lock. When I can get a real lock and it's in front of me on our desk and I can try to solve it, and there's all these really cool papers that aesthetically fit in, like, I would say immersiveness.
Yes.
Is easier to do at times in person.
Yes.
Because I feel like if I have those things, it's more real than just seeing it all online. I think online can help with that by making videos and other like things make it feel real when you get like a video from someone else that's on your project, right? Let's say you're working for an organization and they call us and they have this thing, or it's like a, let's say it's like a certain game we've played where at the end of it, you find out the bad guys won and has taken a person that you've been working with hostage or whatever. And you're like, oh crap, this got more real than it already felt. But I think tangibility is just huge. I think feeling and being able to actually interact with objects just is so rewarding compared to online games.
Yeah, I totally agree there. I don't think in my lifetime we're going to get to the point of technology where you can make me believe that something that's not real or that's digital is tangible.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where we're heading, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like for where we live now, I want to hold the journal in my hand and feel it and flip through the pages and hear the pages flip and do that versus reading it. It's almost the debate of like, well, would you rather read a paper book, or do you like e-reader? Yeah. Not trying to go down that. I think there is something valuable. Last episode, we talked about Legend Game of Maps. That is a different game and not as good of a game if that's all on my computer screen.
Correct.
I don't know many people that would disagree with me on that. Like, you buy that game because you want to hold those maps. You want to hear the crinkleness. You want to see the burnt edges. And it's believable, right? Like the tabletop world, it makes it believable. And then there's just certain types of puzzles that just you can't do, right? It's the same argument, but just for the different thing.
Yep.
Like, I'm thinking some of the solves that we did in, I don't know, Soup, or in Runes of Odin, there's a similar solve. There's stuff that we did in this game that I don't want to spoil too much, that involves lighting. And that is like, oh, like, that's cool. That's really, really cool.
Some of those could have been done online, but then it takes away the fun of what it is.
It takes away the fun.
I think also when it comes to creators, I think a lot of them put really a lot of love into what they build.
Yes.
Digital and in person. But like we talked about, like Legend of Game of Maps, like I could have seen that same map on a computer screen and it looked burned, but I wouldn't care. Like, to see that someone like by themselves handcrafted this map that looks 500 years old and is burnt and feels authentic is more pleasing than staring at a screen that has the same map.
Well, but then Zach, why are so many people playing World of Warcraft and not LARPing?
I don't know. That's a great question, Jared. I don't know.
I think it comes down to like what can do things better, right? Fireballs make more sense in World of Warcraft
Than me yelling fireball.
than you yelling fireball and throwing your red cloth tennis ball at my head.
It's fair.
You know, I think what we're saying is figure out what works best for what you have, and don't be afraid to look at something like you said, like a picture. You can do a picture on a computer. You can do a picture in sending it to me. What works better for the narrative and immersion of your game? Because we've played a lot of games, and I think there have been some things where I've thought that would play a lot better digitally, or that would play a lot better with me holding it in my hand. And I think we're trying to figure out and have those conversations with creators and say, like, really think about that. Like, really, really think about that. I know personally, and I talked about this with a creator just yesterday. I said the thing that I have learned the most from really deep diving into the at-home puzzle and mystery world is I have a very strong perspective now on puzzles that belong in an escape room versus puzzles that belong in an at-home and mystery game.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are intrinsically some puzzles that you do customers a disservice by putting them in an escape room. They could be sitting at home and enjoying that just fine.
Well, yeah, like escape rooms have to be like, I think you would agree with this. They have to be very tangible and big.
Yes. The scale, in my opinion, is something we do not do enough of in escape rooms. And I understand why, because that gets expensive.
Oh, yes.
We're talking dollars. But there are so many just like word puzzles that happen in escape rooms.
If I have to do a Sudoku puzzle in the middle of an escape room, I will actually punch the wall.
Or like there's just some puzzles that I'm just like, you didn't have enough time or something, and you put that in there. And sometimes it's the same thing in the at-home world, right?
Oh, agreed. Yeah.
Right? Like you shoehorned something in, or you didn't have the right puzzle and you settled on this puzzle. But when we're looking at digital versus analog, I think we can ask ourselves a lot of questions of, does this belong? Mm-hmm. Is this the right place? I want to end this middle section on something pretty cool. Because I love talking well about creators. I want to speak good. So I want us to go think digital and then think analog, and without any spoilers, shout out some of our favorites. I think that would be fun.
That's interesting.
To show some love. So think of your top 3 analogs.
Oh, geez.
And your top 3 digitals, and let's shout those out. It can be puzzle or narrative, but
that's hard.
Let's do that.
Okay.
So Zach, I want you to start.
Okay.
Give me your digital list, and then I'll do mine. Okay. And then I'll start physical, and you can come back at me.
Okay.
All right. So without saying too much, give me some of your digital standouts.
Ooh, okay. Okay. So my first I'm going to talk about is actually Maddox Lost Treasure from Society of Curiosities. I really enjoyed the digital aspects of that game. Some of it I thought was so real that I didn't think it was part of the game, which was hilarious in time. But then also there are like video elements and music elements. There's specifically a song that Jared will tell you that I still sometimes sing to this day that I remember for that game because of how much I liked it. But it was just a really well done game where the digital aspects were just the icing on the cake. Like they were perfect complements to the game as a whole. My second one I'm going to say is actually Wish You Were Here series, which is funny because when you think of that series, you get a bunch of postcards.
Yeah, it's mostly physical. That's surprising. Yeah.
But the online aspect of the puzzle hunt was really fun for me to deep dive and try to think about like looking for that information I needed to help solve it. But then also the narrative that plays around the Wish You Were Here, and specifically the videos that play into it, were really cool at the time. Like, because I felt like I was doing these super difficult puzzles to solve this narrative, and then I'd get a video rewarding that. And the videos were always like really enticing of like what's coming next. So I really enjoyed that. And then my third one is Space Corp.
Oh, yes.
I really enjoyed the answering system in that game, as well as there was a lot of fun digital aspects that really played into it.
I think that's a great list. I'm going some different directions. When I think of like some of the most creative solving mechanisms that I've seen digitally, I go Society of Curiosities, but Posy Ring
Okay.
had some of my favorite digital solves in it. And along that same line, in that same category, I would say ASPMC. There's a puzzle in there that I just love that took me by surprise, that was very digital. I love that. The next one I would talk about is just the overall experience in CU Adventures, whether we're talking Lost Temple or Floor 13.
Yeah.
Like they've just built a world and a system.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. And it just works so well. Even though there's again, that's a great physical digital element combination game. But the digital elements in there, whether it's the music or what you're looking at or your inventory system, like, oh, it's just so good.
I think of Lost Temple a lot. And Lost Temple had one of my favorite character introductions in that game.
Yes.
That is purely digital.
Yes, purely digital. That's a great point. I would say a lot of our best characters have been digital.
There's been a lot of good ones.
There's been a lot of great. We have not met because a lot of our physical we have to meet through their writing. We don't get to meet them directly.
Yeah, if you want to send a character to our office to come be part of the game, that's great.
The last one I would say, and this is something we haven't had on the show yet, that we're working towards, that we would love to have the creators of Unlock on our show. But if you've played any number of Unlocks, especially the later seasons, there's a machine function.
Yes,
on the app.
Yep.
And I love that machine function.
Oh, the app's so well done.
I love it.
Yeah.
And the way that they leverage that differently through every single game, I always get excited when we get a machine card and we get to punch the number in.
So cool.
So cool. Freaking love it. Those would be some of my digital standouts for what we've played so far. I'm going to go physical first, okay? Yep. First one on my physical list is Conundrum Box. I love their puzzles. And not just their puzzles, but the way that they leverage the physical items that sometimes they give you. And sometimes it's just paper. But I looked up at my wall as we were putting this list together, and I still can't get away from the puzzle that we got in, what was it?
Maui's Curse?
Maui's Curse and the Greek-themed game.
Yes.
The name eludes me at the moment, but there's a puzzle in each of those that they're so tangible, they're so wonderful that I had the biggest smile on my face that I almost snatched away from you because I was so excited when we were playing.
It's true.
That's one of my physical standouts. The other one is Witchery Spell. Dadgummit, I freaking love the physical solves in that game so much. Again, some of them are right over my computer. I look at them often and I say to myself, Heis, you brilliant man from the Netherlands. Like, you just made some awesome puzzles in here. And they just give you small manipulatables that fit so well into the story and into the experience and the puzzle itself that follows. It's just super great. And the last one that I would say is The Messenger. Getting to hold that old journal to mess around with all of the stuff that you get in the box. I think you're going to mention another game that we haven't played yet in that, but that type of experience is just uncommon. And to get to manipulate those objects just makes me believe it. Like it creeps me out a little bit too. Like, it's just really, really cool to see those things. What's on your physical list?
The first one I actually cover is Escape the Rooms, The Cursed Dollhouse.
Ooh, yeah.
I really enjoyed the physical space that you get to create with the game, with having like an actual set, but then all the puzzles being physical around that space to play into it. So you build up things and move things in the dollhouse. And then you had the book that played into it more and had like the narrative and the creepy aspect of that book as it ever evolved.
And it's funny to me because like Break-In is like the same creators.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. My next one is going to be Legend of Game of Maps. We just talked about that recently. But
last episode, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But gosh darn, if I don't love those maps and all those physical elements, the letters and everything in it, it was just so well done. And then my final one is another one that we've not covered on the show, but you've heard me talk about multiple times, as well as we have an ad for it, is Root of All Evil. I am so excited to eventually talk about that game on the show. And I think we've said already that it will be hopefully here at the very beginning of the next year.
I'm going to spoil it. We have confirmation that the first episode of our second season or second year, our first episode of January, is Angela coming back on the show. She's going to be technically our second return guest. Jack Fallows snuck in there with Light in the Mist, but Angela's coming back, and we're going to be talking some Root of All Evil.
Jared will tell you, and anyone who's listening to this podcast, I love that game so much. The narrative is so well done, but then the physical, creepy aspects of all the things that are in that nailed shut box are just so well done, and I loved every second of it, even to the point that a mysterious person mailed me telling me new information that I'm scared to see where it goes, but I'm very excited.
And if there are other good ones out there, we just made quick lists of what came to the top of our mind.
There's looking at our wall.
Yeah, there's a
there's
lot.
so many.
Those are a lot, but those are some of the standouts that we thought of, and we're always trying to give and shout out some love to creators that we think are just doing a fantastic job. But that's going to wrap us up for Puzzles to the People. We've got questions for creators coming at you next.
There are some awesome people who make the puzzles we love to solve. This is Questions for Creators.
Dude, I played the best game last night.
Jared, I thought we played all our games together.
Well, traditionally we do, but this game was designed to be played by yourself. It's called Box One, and it's a new game from Neil Patrick Harris and Theory 11.
Jared, I'm hurt. What am I supposed to just believe that there's clearly this made up story of a game that's meant for only one person? And you couldn't even come up with something more clever than just Box One. Okay, you know what? I'm done. Call me when there's a Box Two.
Well, if you're not salty and you're looking for a truly awesome single player experience, head to your local Target to pick up Box One. If you don't have or know what Target is, beg Angela Lawson Scott to ship you a copy internationally. Well, welcome back to Puzzling Company. We are now in the section of the show called Questions for Creators, where we get to meet awesome people who make these games. So today with us, we have one of the creators of Argix, and we're excited to get to meet them, to get to know them, and ask them some questions. So let's jump right in. So can you tell us your name, your background before you were involved with games, and a little bit about yourself leading into the games that you have created?
So my name is Mathias Daval. I'm from Paris, France, and I'm the founder of Argix Games, which is a board games company. So my background, as far as games are concerned, I've always been a fan of all kinds of games, actually, and I've actually designed games as far as I can remember when I was a child. So it's a very old hobby of mine. And I have a background in journalism. My main work has been for the past 20 years or so, journalism, and more especially cultural journalism. I'm a theater critic, and mostly for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm a performing arts critic. So that's my main. It remains my main activity. But about pretty much 3 years ago, I created with a friend Argix. We felt like it was there was a need for a new kind of investigation games, which was a kind of game that we loved a lot. And we were both fond of escape games and kind of mystery puzzles and that kind of games. So, but it was in 2017, and it was the beginning of the market for that kind of games, for investigation games. Like Unlocked was just released, and but in France there was not that many games, that many investigation games, and we wanted to do something more realistic, like escape games, but you can play at home. And now it's pretty common, and you have a lot of various escape game in a box, or escape boxes, however you want to call them. But at the time there was not that many, and so our idea was to create games that would mix storytelling, which is really the most important thing for us, is really to tell a story. And all our games try to really rely on a strong storytelling. So storytelling is the first thing. Then there is investigation, of course, with all kinds of puzzles and as various as possible. And also two other elements which are very characteristic of our games are we wanted to include not just paper, like just documents, but to have like pseudo-realistic object items to create more immersive games. And so all of our games include a few objects that are kind of clues, part of the investigation. And finally, another characteristic is that we do ARG games, which are alternate reality games. So that means that our games try to go outside the box, well, to include different kind of medias of the real world, like to social networks or video online or even phone calls, emails, that kind of stuff. And also that is another way of enhancing the immersion of each scenario.
So, how do you see your background come out in your games?
So yeah, I'm a theater critic, but I'm a writer myself, and I think I've been writing and creating stories, and yeah, have always been one of the main centers of interest in my life. And so I think what I want to do with games is both to what I like is really the creative process. Of game designing, which includes for me to try to be creative in the mechanism of the game, but also and as I said, in the writing of a story. So I think, yeah, it really the fact that I'm a writer for a living in various ways, and I also actually write. I wrote some fiction, and so I think it all helped in focusing on the story itself. And actually, that's also I graduated also from philosophy, from like a master's degree at the Sorbonne, like 22 years ago. But I mentioned that because it's also another thing that is very important for me. It's some kind of almost metaphysical way of point of view about reality itself. Is for me, reality is a fiction. Reality is a fiction that we create, that each of us creates. And so games are just like a small focus on a particular space-time that is, yeah, self-containing. It's just, and for a small amount of time in a fictional space, you do something else. And it's a kind of metaphor for a lot of things, of the real world. So it's not, I never oppose gaming or, playing games with the real world. It's just as real for me. It's just another kind of fiction. And so I think that whole way of seeing things reflect on the kind of games I create. And so, of course, in games like investigation games, there is more mechanisms involved, and it's less philosophical than that. But for example, I also worked on. I just released a role-playing game, which is called Logos, like in Greek, Logos language, speech. And it's actually a role-playing game about exactly what I've said about reality as the result of an intention that is expressed by words, and you play like magician and you have to create sentences, and those like magical sentences will alter reality itself. So it's really it's all about the same kind of concepts about language, stories, fiction, and it can give games, it can give role-playing games, books, it could be movies or whatever, but I think it's the same principles that are at play there.
So it was very clear to us that it was an intentional decision to break Legacy into these what are almost standalone games. What was the creative or strategic reason behind developing an experience like that that's broken up into two separate parts?
So Legacy is split in two episodes, two games. It's the same storytelling, it's the same scenario, but there are two parts which can be played independently. And we wanted to do that because I think it's more the way that we realized players were playing that kind of games, that it was way too long for most players to have, if both games were just one, it would be like, I don't know, maybe for some players more than 4 hours. If it can be even short, it can be shorter, of course, for players who are used to that kind of games and good at it, but for most players it would be really too long. And I also we felt as it was reached two period of times. I mean, the first episode is about the construction of the Eiffel Tower. So it's the late 19th century. In Paris. It's a very specific atmosphere. And the other scenario is in Greece nowadays. So it's really, two kinds of setup. And so we wanted to really split them for those two reasons. And so, to have a feeling that you had two experiences, two different experiences, even if it's the same game and the same storytelling.
Why did you decide to do games that have like mixed experiences in terms of having like in-person tangibility items as well as having elements that are played through digital aspects?
I think it really comes from my own tastes of I love fiction, all kind of fiction that really is based on that kind of intersection between fiction and reality. Like The Matrix, for example, but it could be more less known works of art. And I think it all and one of the movies that really maybe inspired us in some ways is the game with Michael Douglas, which is an ARG game basically, and in real life. And also, as a player, I had a very, very strong experience with a French video game called In Memoriam, which was quite famous in France in the early 2000. It was a video game where you tracked a serial killer. You hunted a serial killer, but it was ARG, so you had to send email to, and it was very, very immersive because they had actually done something very unique, which is they hired a bunch of like interns to work day and night. And so they actually answered all the players, even like, I don't know, it's 3 a.m. If you tried to reach the serial killer, once you had to track him, well, he would answer you even in the middle of the night. So that was just incredible, to experience that as a player. And I always kept, that in mind. And I always wanted to do something like that, but in board gaming. And when I first tried escape games in 2015 or something like that, I felt like I wanted to mix that kind of feeling and board games and investigation games. So I think it's a mix of all that. And for me, it's also related to what I said about my philosophy of life about fiction and reality, because I think that it's something that we can experience even in real life. And with the white rabbit theory, if there is a white rabbit, that would maybe be a clue to somewhere else, to a different space-time, to the real reality. And I've always been very interested in those theories. And so designing a game that would try to experience that kind of feeling was obvious to me.
So one thing we want to know is you guys at Argus Game have a bunch of other games as well. Can you tell us a little bit about the different offerings that you guys have there?
So we have a line of investigation games that is called Pocket Investigations, which are the same principles as Legacy, that is really escape in a box, but it's smaller, lighter games. They come in the form of an envelope you actually receive by mail, and you have same kind of things with a few documents, a few objects, and an investigation to solve. We have eight different scenarios, totally different kind of scenarios. Like there's one with an investigation on the moon. There's another one where in the Middle Ages with the Dame à la licorne, which is a famous French tapestry. There is another one about casino heist. There is another one different kind of games, but same concept. So that's our main line of games. And we also have developed a few other games that are not investigation games, like abstract strategy, a small abstract strategy two-player game, and role-playing games. So we have, but it's more marginal compared to our main, to our core line of games. We also have design online games, online investigation games. We actually started that when we created our very first escape box, which was called Apocalypse, and in 2018. And at the same time, we developed like an online version of the game, which was actually like kind of sequel to the game. And it is still on. You can actually still play it now, and it's the same principle. So it's still RG gaming. So you still have to, consult a lot of things on the internet or make phone calls and that kind of stuff. But it's based online story.
So, what's in the future for Argix Games? You can tell us as much as you want, or none at all. But we are very excited to hear what is coming up next.
I'm working on one big project, which will probably take some time because it's both an escape box like Legacy. So same kind of box, but with a twist, with something else that I can't really talk about, but there is something else. And it's actually the main thing about this new project is that it's actually based on a real place in France, in Britain, in Brittany. I don't know, it's Brittany. The west part of France. And it's a castle there that is owned by a friend of mine, and he's restoring it. It's a huge place with like a forest, and with it's just an incredible magical place. And we are designing some kind of story about like a legend about this place, and and it's gonna be something like Lost, in the storytelling. So a kind of space-time, you don't really know where you are. Is it real? Is it a dream? Is it? And from that, we will develop design games and design other kind of things, books, and that are based on this place, on this mythological place that is also real. and actually we'll design games that you can play, like escape games you can play in the forest of the castle. So yeah, it's gonna be something that will mix different kinds of games. And so there will be an escape box. I don't know when. It's gonna take some time. And in the meantime, I'll probably release something next year in Cannes at the International Game Festival in Cannes in late February that I can't really talk about now, but it will be an investigation game, but a more minimalistic, let's say, kind of concept.
And the question we always and want to know the answer to from everyone is, what other games are you playing? This can be at-home puzzle and mystery games, the likes of which we cover on the podcast, video games. What are you enjoying and what are you playing right now as a creator?
So I really enjoyed, but I don't know if there's an English version, but it's a game very similar to ours called Codex. But it's actually a friend of mine who created his own company, and he's doing not only investigation games, but that's his first main game. It's not ARG, but it's otherwise it's really similar, and it's a very, very good game. So if there's an English version, or maybe there will be if there's not right now at the moment, because it was really successful here. And I also, I don't know. I tried a lot of games of similar games. So I don't know if I have like one favorite, but I really enjoy, for example, what they're doing at Enigma Emporium. For example, I really liked. I tried I think 2 or 3 of their games. At the moment, I'm back because of we can do that again, do real escape games. So I'm back at playtesting and doing a lot of real escape games, live escape games. So yeah, and but they're in France, so that won't be very helpful for your listeners. And what else? Yeah, I don't know. I didn't play much actually for the past year and a half. I didn't play much games, so I'm not really up to date. Yeah, I don't know actually. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. It's been a pleasure, really. And you can find information about Argix Games online at argixgames.com. And if you have, actually, we are welcoming prototypes or new ideas or concepts of games. If you have game designers we are very open to new concepts, so we can discuss about that. And so feel free to write us if you have any propositions of games, or whether it's investigation games or other kind of games, actually. So yeah.
Well, we just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We look forward to getting to have you back on the show again. We enjoyed playing through Legacy, and thanks for the opportunity to get to do that. If you're looking to pick up a copy of Legacy, you can head over to argyxgames.com. That's ARGYX games.com. And you can pick up Legacy, or you can pick up one of the other offerings that we talked about during our Questions for Creator section. As always, you can always show kindness to creators, liking their Facebook, their other social medias, helping them out. Zach, how can our listeners help us out?
You can send me $100 at the following mailing address. But what you can do is, if you want to show us some love, you can go to where you listen to this podcast at, if that's Google, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever, and leave us a 5-star review. We'd very much appreciate it. Tell us how much you're loving the podcast. And if you want to support us other than that, you can find us on Facebook. You can go to @Puzzling Company, or you can go to Instagram and find us at Puzzling Company, or you can send us an email just telling us how you've been enjoying the show, or leaving some, critique or what you thought we could work on as well. Because we're always excited to hear from you guys if it's good, or if it's things you think we can improve on. So,
well, that is going to wrap us up for this week. Zach, what do we have next week?
That's a great question. I'm actually pretty excited for next week's episode. We're going to be able to get to cover some Deadbolt games.
Yes, I'm pumped about this because I think this has been one of the most inspirational series to a lot of our creators.
Yes.
Like I remember multiple people saying, I picked up a Deadbolt. And that got me excited. And we have not had a chance yet to do that, but we're super excited we're going to be playing 4 Deadbolt games.
Yep.
Talking about them, and then we're going to get to have the owner of Deadbolt on to talk about a lot of fun things, so be sure to check us out next week. Well, that's going to wrap us up for this week of Puzzling Company. We'll see you next week. For all of us here at Puzzling Company, which there's only 2 of us, me and
Zach.
We'll catch you next week.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Puzzling Company and online at puzzlingcompany.com. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, keep puzzling.
This has been a Rogue Media Network podcast.